Welcome! Tonight, we are going to embark on a quiet journey, a slow, steady drift through the sprawling, beautiful landscape of the Carolinas. This is a place where the air smells of damp pine and salt spray, and where the ground beneath your feet holds stories that stretch back through vast expanses of time. Before we begin our walk from the ancient, mist-covered mountains of the west toward the shifting, sun-warmed sands of the Atlantic shore, I want you to take a moment to find your own space of rest. Adjust your pillow until it feels just right. Pull the covers up to your chin, or perhaps just over your shoulders. If you feel any tension in your jaw or your forehead, try to let it soften. If your mind is still caught in the rhythm of the day, let those thoughts begin to drift away, like clouds passing slowly over a high mountain ridge. We are in no rush here. Everything we encounter tonight will move at the pace of the turning earth, unhurried and peaceful. Our path tonight follows the natural tilt of the world. We will start our journey in the high elevations of the west, where the air is thin, crisp, and cool. From there, we will slowly follow the path of the water, watching as small mountain streams grow into wide, lazy rivers that wind their way down toward the sea. The Carolinas are two distinct states, yet they are woven together by a shared geological heritage. They are bound by a border that stretches for over 300 miles, a long, winding line that cuts through deep emerald forests, rolling red clay hills, and wide, fertile plains. As we stand at the very beginning of our journey, high among the western peaks, it is worth reflecting on the age of this land. The ground here is home to some of the oldest geological formations on our entire planet. While many of the world's great mountain ranges are jagged and young, rising up in sharp, rocky protests against the sky, the mountains of the Carolinas are different. They are soft. They are wise. They have been smoothed by the patient hands of time, weathered by hundreds of millions of years of wind, frost, and gentle rain. Some of the rock beneath the soil here dates back over 1 billion years, to a time before the first plants grew, before the first creatures crawled from the sea. These mountains have watched the continents of the world drift apart and collide, standing as silent, steady witnesses to the slow, rhythmic breath of the earth itself. Feel the weight of that history, steady, unchanging, and infinitely calm. As we prepare to move forward, imagine the scent of a cool mountain morning, the way the first light filters through the canopy of ancient oaks, and let yourself settle deeply into the stillness of the journey ahead. If these quiet stories and the steady rhythm of the earth help you find a sense of peace tonight, perhaps you might consider joining our little community by subscribing, or even leaving a soft comment when you wake. It helps this space stay quiet and calm for everyone. But for now, there is nothing more you need to do. Just listen and let the words drift over you like a cool breeze. We find ourselves now standing on what many call the backbone of the East, the Blue Ridge. It is a long, winding spine of rock and forest that stretches across the horizon, a massive natural wall that separates the high plateau from the rolling lands below. These mountains are a vital part of the great Appalachian chain, but they have a character all their own. They are not the sharp, jagged peaks of the west, reaching up like broken glass into the sky. Instead, they are rounded, soft, and draped in a heavy cloak of deep green forest. they feel less like a barrier and more like a resting place. When we speak of the age of these mountains, the numbers are almost too large for the mind to hold. Geologists estimate that the oldest rocks here, the very foundation of the Blue Ridge, are over 1 billion years old. To put that into perspective, if the entire history of the Earth were a single day, these mountains would have been standing since early in the morning, watching as the first complex life began to stir in the ancient seas. They are far older than the dinosaurs. They were already ancient when the first trees began to grow on land. They have been weathered by time, smoothed by millions of years of wind and rain until they have become the gentle, rolling giants we see today. There is a deep comfort in that kind of permanence. In a world that often feels fast and fleeting, these stones have remained steady and unmoving for 1,000 million years. As you imagine yourself standing on a high overlook, looking out across the endless succession of peaks, you might notice something peculiar. Even on a clear day, the air between the ridges isn't perfectly transparent. Instead, it seems to be filled with a soft, ethereal glow. From a distance, the mountains don't look green or brown. They look like they have been painted in shades of sapphire, indigo, and pale cerulean. It is a deep, smoky blue that settles into the valleys and clings to the slopes like a silken veil. This isn't just a trick of the light or a dusty haze. There is a very specific, very beautiful reason why these mountains carry this signature color. A secret held by the very trees that call these ancient slopes home, and a gentle piece of chemistry that turns the air itself into a masterpiece of color. The blue you see isn't an illusion, nor is it merely the distance between your eyes and the far-off peaks. While many mountain ranges appear to fade into a hazy gray as they recede toward the horizon, the Blue Ridge maintains a vibrant, cooling indigo. This phenomenon is a beautiful intersection of biology and physics, a gift given to the air by the millions of trees that blanket these slopes. It is as if the mountains themselves are creating their own atmosphere, a soft blanket of color that rests upon the ridges and settles deep into the valleys. If you were to walk among the ancient oaks and the tall, straight trunks of the tulip poplars that dominate these woods, you would be surrounded by a silent, invisible process. On warm, still days, these trees release tiny molecules called volatile organic compounds, specifically a hydrocarbon known as isoprene. You might think of it as the forest exhaling. The trees produce these compounds for many reasons, perhaps to protect their delicate leaves from the stress of the sun's heat, or to communicate with one another in a chemical language that we are only beginning to understand. As these countless billions of isoprene molecules rise from the leaves, they linger in the humid mountain air, creating a fine, natural mist. When the bright sunlight filters down through the atmosphere and hits these microscopic particles, something remarkable happens. This is a process scientists call Rayleigh scattering. It is the same physics that makes the midday sky appear blue. The tiny particles are just the right size to scatter the shorter, blue wavelengths of light in every direction, while letting the longer red and yellow waves pass through relatively undisturbed. Because there are so many trees here, and because the moisture in the air is often held still, by the deep valleys and high ridges, this blue light becomes trapped. It pools in the hollows and drapes over the summits, creating that signature soft, smoky blue that has captivated the travelers for centuries. It is a living haze, a sign of a healthy, breathing ecosystem. When you look out at that blue horizon, you aren't just seeing a trick of light. You are seeing the collective breath of the Appalachian forest. It softens the edges of the world, making the mountains look like a series of watercolor washes, each layer a slightly different shade of cornflower, sapphire, or periwinkle. There is no harshness in this landscape, only the gentle, blurred transition from one peak to the next. Take a moment now to simply imagine that color. It is a cool, quiet blue, the color of a deep, still lake or a twilight sky. Just before the first star appears, take a slow, deep breath in, imagining that you are breathing in that clean, mountain-filtered air, scented with the faint, sweet musk of damp earth and green leaves. Hold it for just a second, feeling the stillness of the high country, and then let it out slowly. Your body is heavy, your mind is calm, and the blue mist is all around you, tucking the world in for the night. As we follow this blue veil higher and higher, we eventually reach the points where the earth seems to touch the clouds themselves. Among these peaks, one stands taller than all the rest, a place where the air grows thin and the world below seems to disappear into the vastness of the sky. This is the realm of the giants, where the rules of the southern climate begin to change and the landscape begins to whisper secrets of the far north. The climb to the summit of Mount Mitchell is a journey through time and geography. As we rise above the 6,000-foot mark, the broad-leafed oaks and maples of the lower slopes begin to disappear, replaced by the dark, slender silhouettes of the Fraser fir and the red spruce. These are trees that belong to the far north, to the vast boreal forests of Canada and the subarctic. Standing here at 6,684 feet above sea level, you are at the highest point in the United States east of the Mississippi River. It is a place of immense stillness, where the sky feels close enough to touch and the world below is reduced to a soft rolling carpet of green and blue. The air at this altitude is noticeably thinner and remarkably cool. While the cities in the flatlands may be basking in 90-degree heat, the summit of Mount Mitchell rarely sees a day warmer than the mid-60s. It is a sanctuary of coolness, a high-altitude island where the climate of the Ice Age has been preserved for millennia. When the great glaciers retreated northward thousands of years ago, they left behind these pockets of cold weather life, stranded on the highest peaks of the Appalachians. These sky islands are home to rare plants and animals that exist nowhere else in the South, creating a unique biological fortress surrounded by a sea of warmer air. Close your eyes for a moment and imagine the summit. The ground beneath your feet is rugged, composed of ancient metamorphic rock that has weathered the elements for hundreds of millions of years. A light wind brushes past, carrying the sharp, clean scent of evergreen needles and cold stone. There is no hum of traffic here, no noise of the modern world, only the sigh of the wind through the spruce boughs and the occasional lonely call of a high-altitude bird. The clouds often drift across the peak, moving so slowly they seem to be part of the mountain itself. They wrap the world in a soft white gauze, muffling sound and softening the light until everything feels private and protected. The spruce fir forest is a place of deep shadows and vibrant mosses. Because the sun's rays are often filtered through a thick layer of clouds or the dense canopy of needles, the forest floor remains damp and cool. Every fallen log is a miniature world draped in velvet green moss that holds onto the mist like a sponge. It is an environment that rewards slow movements and quiet observation. As you walk, or imagine walking, along the high ridges, your footsteps are cushioned by a thick layer of fallen needles, making your journey nearly silent. But the mountain does not end at the summit. As we begin to move down from these rocky heights, following the natural tilt of the land, the environment begins to change once more. The sharp, thin air of the peaks gives way to something softer and more humid. The water that began as a light mist on the summit starts to gather, trickling down the slopes and joining together in small, hidden streams. We are leaving the wind-swept giants behind and descending into the deep, hidden folds of the mountains, places where the rainfall is so consistent and the shadows so deep that the forest takes on a character unlike anywhere else in the temperate world. We are heading toward the valleys where the earth breathes in deep, rhythmic gulps of rain into the heart of a hidden rainforest. As the altitude drops, the air begins to thicken. It carries a weight that wasn't there on the high peaks, a soft, humid embrace that smells of wet stone and crushed leaves. We are entering a place where the line between the earth and the sky often blurs into a silver gray mist. This is the Appalachian temperate rainforest, a hidden emerald world tucked into the steep folds of the Blue Ridge Escarpment. Most people associate the word rainforest with the steaming jungles of the Amazon or the towering evergreens of the Pacific Northwest. But here, in a specific pocket of the Carolinas, most notably around the rugged terrain of Woorges State Park, nature has created a similar miracle. This region is one of the wettest places in North America outside of the Pacific coast. In an average year, these mountains receive more than 90 inches of rain. To put that in perspective, imagine a world where it rains nearly every other day, a constant, gentle replenishment that keeps the landscape in a state of perpetual, vibrant green. As you imagine yourself standing on the forest floor, listen to the symphony of water. It isn't just the sound of a storm, it's the sound of life in constant motion. You might hear the muffled roar of a waterfall, one of hundreds that lace these steep gorges. But closer to you, the sounds are smaller and more intimate. There is the rhythmic drip of a single droplet falling from the tip of a leaf into a pool below. There is the soft hiss of a stream gliding over ancient, moss-covered boulders. The air feels cool and saturated, like a damp cloth pressed gently against your skin. Take a slow, deep breath. Feel that moisture fill your lungs, bringing with it the clean, ancient scent of the earth. In this high humidity sanctuary, the trees are giants of oak, hemlock, and maple. But the true wonders are often found closer to the ground. Because the air is so consistently wet, the forest floor is a tapestry of unimaginable detail. There are mosses here that feel like thick, plush carpets, soaking up water until they are heavy and dark. Ferns with delicate, feathery fronds reach out from the rock faces, some of them rare species that have survived here for thousands of years, tucked away in these sheltered, damp canyons. This environment is a biological time capsule. The sheer amount of water creates a microclimate that remains remarkably stable, shielding the life within from the extremes of heat or cold found elsewhere. It is a place of deep stillness and quiet growth, where the passage of time is marked not by clocks, but by the slow expansion of a lichen on a tree trunk, or the gradual deepening of a riverbed. The lushness of the temperate rainforest isn't just a feast for the eyes. It is a vital necessity for the creatures that call it home. In a world this wet, life doesn't always need lungs to breathe in the way we do. As we look closer at the damp leaf litter and the dark spaces beneath the fallen logs, we begin to see the movement of small, sleek forms. The saturated air allows for a type of existence that would be impossible in a drier world, leading us to a group of animals that have made these mountains their ultimate sanctuary. These quiet residents of the mist are the keepers of the forest's secret, thriving in the very moisture that diffuses this ancient dripping landscape. If you were to kneel down and gently lift a water-smooth stone or a piece of decaying bark, you might find a resident of this misty world that is as ancient as the mountains themselves. These are the salamanders, and here, in the heart of the Carolinas and the surrounding Appalachians, you have entered what scientists call the salamander capital of the world. There are more species of these quiet, slender creatures here than anywhere else on the entire planet. It is a curious thing to consider why this specific corner of the earth. The answer lies in the very geography we have been exploring. As the climate changed over millions of years, these mountains became a series of islands in the sky. For a small, moisture-loving creature, the deep, warm valleys between the peaks act like vast oceans they cannot easily cross. A group of salamanders living on one high, cool ridge becomes isolated from their neighbors on the next ridge over. In this quiet solitude, nature goes to work, and over vast stretches of time, each mountain peak has developed its own unique species, found nowhere else in the world. It is a slow-motion explosion of life, occurring over millions of years of mountain stillness. As you imagine these small beings resting in the damp leaf litter, consider how different their lives are from ours. Many of the species here belong to a family known as the lungless salamanders. They do not have lungs to draw in the air. Instead, they breathe entirely through their skin and the lining of their mouths. To do this, their skin must remain constantly moist, which is why the temperate rainforests and the morning mists are so vital to their survival. They are perfectly synchronized with the rhythm of the rain. They do not need to hunt with the frantic energy of warm-blooded animals. They are patient, waiting in the shadows for the world to come to them. Because they are so intimately connected to their environment, salamanders are often called sentinels or bioindicators. They are the quiet guardians of the forest's health. Because they breathe through their skin, they are incredibly sensitive to changes in the air and water around them. If the water is pure and the soil is rich, the salamanders thrive. Their presence is a silent testament to the integrity of the ecosystem. To see a sleek, dark-eyed salamander resting on a mossy log is to know that the forest is breathing well. There is a profound stillness in their world. They move with a slow, deliberate grace, their damp skin glistening under the filtered light of the canopy. In the hush of the woods, they represent a link to a prehistoric past, a reminder of the slow, steady pace of evolution that has unfolded over eons. As the sun begins to set behind the high ridges, the world of the salamander remains cool and dark, tucked away in the shadows of the ferns. But as the light fades and the deep blues of the mountains turn to the velvet blacks of night, the forest prepares for another kind of wonder. The dampness that sustains the salamanders also nourishes the life that will soon illuminate the darkness. Just as the earth holds treasures beneath its surface, the night air holds a rhythmic beauty that only appears in the briefest of windows, shifting our gaze from the quiet floor of the forest up into the air between the ancient trees. Feel the cool air settle as we wait for the first spark of light to break the evening gloom. As the last sliver of twilight disappears behind the jagged peaks of the Great Smoky Mountains, the darkness becomes absolute. Here, in the deep folds of the Appalachian Range, the night is not empty. It is a canvas, waiting for a phenomenon so rare and so precise that it feels like a secret kept by the mountains themselves. For just a few weeks each year, typically in late May or early June, the forest floor and the low-hanging branches become the stage for the synchronous fireflies. While there are over 2,000 species of fireflies in the world, only a tiny handful possess the ability to coordinate their light. Among them is a small beetle known to scientists as Photinus carolinus. In the stillness of these ancient woods, thousands of these tiny creatures begin to stir. At first, you might see a stray spark here or there, a lonely yellow-green light drifting through the hemlocks. But then, as if an invisible conductor has raised a baton, the forest begins to breathe in light. The synchronization is breathtaking in its simplicity. Thousands of fireflies will flash in perfect unison, 6 to 8 quick bursts of brilliance, and then suddenly the entire forest plunges back into total darkness. This period of silence and shadow lasts for several seconds, a collective pause that feels heavy and expectant. Then, all at once, the light returns, a rhythmic pulsing that ripples through the trees like a silent wave of electricity. Scientists have studied this behavior for decades, seeking to understand how such simple organisms can achieve such complex coordination. It is a biological masterpiece driven by the need to be seen in a crowded forest where thousands of different insects are competing for attention. The Photinus carolinus found that by flashing together, they could cut through the visual noise. It is a communal show signal, a way for the males to announce their presence to the females waiting in the leaf litter below. The timing of this display is governed by the very earth itself. The emergence of the fireflies is linked to degree days, a measurement of the accumulated warmth in the soil since the beginning of the year. If the spring is cool and damp, the display starts later. If the sun has been generous, the lights appear early. The moisture in the air and the temperature of the ground must be just right, creating a perfect window of harmony between the climate and the creature. Take a slow, deep breath now and imagine yourself standing on a soft, mossy path in the heart of the Smokies. The air is cool and carries the scent of damp earth and pine needles. There is no sound but the distant, muffled rush of a mountain stream. In the velvet blackness before you, the first wave of light begins, soft, rhythmic, and gentle. It is not a frantic flickering, but a slow, steady heartbeat of dawn. The light does not hurt the eyes. It is a soft glow like a distant star brought down to earth. Watch as the pulses move in and out of the shadows of the giant poplars. 6 flashes, then darkness. 6 flashes, then darkness. In that moment of shadow, the world feels vast and peaceful. You are witnessing a ritual that has repeated for thousands of years, a quiet conversation between the earth and the sky. As you watch this rhythmic dance, feel the tension leave your shoulders. Your own breathing begins to find its own natural, steady rhythm, mirroring the ebb and flow of the firefly's light. The forest is alive, yet it is profoundly still. It is a place where time slows down, where the only thing that matters is the next gentle pulse of light in the dark. This luminous display is a reminder of the hidden wonders that reside in the quiet corners of the Carolinas. But even as we look up at the lights in the trees, we must remember that the mountains hold other treasures, far older and more enduring, buried deep beneath the roots of the pines and the mossy beds where the fireflies rest. The same forces that shape these ridges also forged incredible beauty within the very stone of the earth. Deep under the cool, damp soil of the mountains, there is a silent world of geometry and color. While we often think of the Carolinas for their lush forests and winding rivers, the region is also a vast, ancient treasure chest of the Earth's most resilient creations. For millions of years, intense heat and staggering pressure work together deep within the crust, slowly arranging atoms into the rigid, beautiful structures of crystals. Imagine the stillness of a ruby tucked away in a pocket of dark rock. It doesn't need the sun to be beautiful. Its deep red hue is a result of its very nature, a secret kept in the dark. In North Carolina, this hidden beauty is incredibly diverse. It holds a unique distinction as the only state in the Union where all 4 of the most prized precious gemstones, diamonds, rubies, sapphires, and emeralds, have been found in their natural state. This variety is a testament to the complex and turbulent geological history of the Appalachian Range, where tectonic plates once collided with such monumental force that they forged these rare jewels from the very elements of the earth. One of the most remarkable places in this subterranean landscape is a small community appropriately named Hiddenite. It is a quiet, unassuming place, but beneath its rolling fields lies a geological wonder. It was here that a massive emerald, the largest ever recorded in North America, was discovered. Imagine a crystal of such depth and clarity, a translucent forest green pillar that had remained undisturbed while mountains rose and eroded, and while civilizations grew above it. There is a profound sense of peace in the thought of something so beautiful existing in total darkness and silence for millions of years, untouched by the wind or the rain. Beyond these rare jewels, the Carolinas are rich with quartz, the most common, yet perhaps the most versatile of the mountain's treasures. You might find a piece of it while walking along a dry creek bed, a smooth white stone that feels cool and heavy in your palm. In its purest form, quartz is clear and glass-like, often forming perfect six-sided prisms that catch the light in a soft, ethereal way. Some of these crystals are tinted a royal purple, known as amethyst, while others are a smoky gray or a golden citrine, creating a hidden rainbow buried beneath the forest floor. Think for a moment of the patience of the earth. These gems do not grow in a day or even a century. They are the product of immense, unfolding time. As you rest now, let the thought of that deep geological time settle over you like a heavy, warm blanket. There is no rush in the world of stone. There is only the slow, steady pressure of the layers above and the gradual, peaceful cooling of the earth's heart. As we move away from the high, rocky crags where these gems are most often found, our journey takes us gradually downward. We are leaving the rugged, vertical terrain of the Blue Ridge and moving toward the Piedmont, a word that literally means foot of the mountain. The land begins to level out into long, undulating hills that roll like the waves of a slow-moving sea. The air grows slightly thicker, and the scent of the mountain air begins to blend with the smell of sun-warmed earth. The soil here changes, turning from the dark, rich loam of the high forests to the famous heavy red clay of the Central Carolinas. We are traveling toward an invisible boundary, a place where the hard, ancient rock of the mountains meets a very different kind of landscape. As we continue our steady, gentle descent, we approach a place where the very foundation of the earth shifts beneath us. This is a quiet, invisible threshold known as the fall line. It is a seam in the map of the Carolinas, a boundary that stretches from the north to the south, marking a profound change in the landscape. Behind us, toward the mountains, lies the Piedmont, a region built upon hard crystalline rock that has resisted the wearing of time for hundreds of millions of years. Ahead of us, the land begins to soften into the coastal plain, a vast expanse of sediment, sand, and clay that stretches out toward the Atlantic. If you could travel back in time, millions of years into the past, you would find that this line was not just a geological marker, but a literal one. This was the ancient shoreline of the Atlantic Ocean. Imagine standing here where the rolling hills now meet the flat plains and hearing the rhythmic, surging sound of waves crashing against the rocky edge of the continent. The ocean once reached this far inland, its salt spray misting the very air we are breathing in our imagination. Now, that ocean has receded, leaving behind a ghost of its presence in the sandy soil and the smooth, rounded stones of the riverbeds. Because the rock of the Piedmont is so much harder than the soft sands of the coast, every major river that crosses this line must make a sudden, graceful descent. As the water moves from the resistant stone onto the yielding earth, it creates a series of rapids and waterfalls. This is why it is called the fall line. These are not the thundering vertical drops of the high mountains, but rather a series of gentle, bubbling steps, where the water sings as it tumbles over the ledge of the ancient continent. Historically, this line dictated where people would gather and build their lives. When early travelers moved inland from the sea, their boats could go no further than these rapids. The water became too shallow and the rocks too frequent, forcing them to stop and settle. This is why so many of the great cities of the Carolinas, places like Raleigh and Columbia, were built exactly where they are. They sit on the edge of the old world and the new, perched on the very lip of the ancient sea. It is a place of transition, a quiet reminder that the earth is always changing, even if those changes happen too slowly for us to see. As we linger in this middle ground, the landscape offers one more curious sight, rising up from the gently rolling hills of the Piedmont are strange, isolated mountains that seem to stand entirely on their own. They are not part of a range or a chain. They are solitary giants, rising hundreds of feet above the surrounding terrain. Geologists call these monadnocks, a word that feels as heavy and ancient as the stones themselves. They are the stubborn survivors of time, remnants of a world that has otherwise been washed away. One of the most famous of these silent sentinels is Stone Mountain, a massive dome of granite that sits like a sleeping giant in the heart of the woods, waiting for us to explore its stillness. Lois, this stillness is not the absence of life, but the presence of something very old and very patient. When you look at a monadnock like Stone Mountain, you are looking at a survivor of immense spans of time. Imagine a vast rolling sea of green forest, and then suddenly rising out of the earth like the smooth back of a great pale whale is a massive dome of solid stone. It is a solitary figure in the landscape, standing nearly 600 feet above the surrounding terrain, disconnected from any mountain range existing in its own quiet world. In the language of geology, this incredible formation is known as a Pluton. Its story began nearly 300 million years ago, deep beneath the surface of the Earth. At that time, a massive pocket of molten magma was pushing its way upward, fueled by the incredible heat and pressure of the planet's interior. But this magma never reached the surface. It never erupted as a volcano. Instead, it stalled miles underground, trapped in the dark, where it began to cool with agonizing slowness. Because it cooled so gradually, the minerals within it had time to grow and lock together into a dense, incredibly hard granite. For millions of years, this giant bubble of stone remained hidden, a secret kept by the earth. But while the granite was hard and resistant, the layers of rock and soil above it were not. The persistent, gentle touch of rain, the freezing and thawing of the seasons, and the slow movement of ancient rivers began to wear away the surface of the world. Bit by bit, the softer earth was stripped away and carried off to the sea. It took eons of patient erosion to finally reveal what was underneath. The mountain did not rise up. Rather, the world around it sank away, leaving the granite dome exposed to the open air for the first time. When you look at the face of Stone Mountain today, you are seeing the heart of an ancient world. The surface is smooth and weathered, marked by long vertical streaks where rainwater has traced the same paths for thousands of years. There are small depressions in the rock called weathering pits, where water collects and tiny ecosystems of moss and specialized plants find a home in the otherwise barren stone. It is a place where time seems to hold its breath. Take a slow, deep breath now, and imagine yourself standing at the base of this giant. Feel the cool, solid presence of the granite beneath your feet. It is a stone that has sat unmoved while continents shifted and oceans rose and fell. It does not hurry. It does not change. There is a profound peace in something so permanent, a quiet strength that comes from simply enduring. As you visualize the smooth gray curve of the dome reaching up toward the clouds, let your own thoughts become just as still. Imagine the weight of the mountain anchoring you, providing a sense of heavy, comfortable gravity that allows your body to sink deeper into your bed. The world may move and change, but the stone remains wrapped in the silence of the ages. And as the sun sets over the Piedmont, casting long, soft shadows across the granite, we prepare to leave the high stones behind and move toward the shadowed forests where other, more elusive residents of the Carolinas make their home. As we leave the silent stone of the Piedmont behind, we move into the deeper, softer shadows of the inland forests. Here, the landscape begins to change, the hard granite giving way to soil that is richer and more secretive. In these quiet spaces, where the light filters through the branches in long golden slants, lives a creature as rare as a dream. This is the home of the red wolf, a ghost of the southern landscape that once roamed across the entire southeast, from the Atlantic coast all the way to the forests of Texas. Imagine, for a moment, the transition from the cold, unmoving mountain to the warm, living pulse of the woods. The red wolf is a true American original, found nowhere else on Earth. Unlike the larger, more famous gray wolf of the north, the red wolf is a smaller, more slender animal, built for the dense thickets and humid air of the south. Its coat is a beautiful, muted tapestry of cinnamon red, tawny brown, and charcoal gray colors that allow it to vanish completely into the dappled shadows of the brush. They are shy and elusive, preferring the deep solitude of the woods to the presence of anything else. To see one in the wild is a rare gift, a moment of connection with a lineage that has existed in these lands for thousands of years. These wolves are remarkably social, perhaps even more so than their northern cousins. They live in small, dedicated family groups, often led by a breeding pair that stays together for life. Within these families, there is a complex language of whimpers, barks, and howls. But their howl is not a sound of aggression. It is a song of belonging. It is a way to call the family back together. After a night of wandering, a melodic, haunting sound that carries through the cool evening air, vibrating softly against the trunks of the trees. It is a sound that speaks of the deep, ancient bond between the land and the life it sustains. Today, the only place in the entire world where you can still find a wild population of red wolves is in the eastern reaches of North Carolina. In the vast protected wetlands and coastal forests of the Albemarle-Pamlico Peninsula, a small and precious group of these wolves continues to live as they always have. Scientists and conservationists work with a quiet, patient dedication to protect them, ensuring that their soft footsteps continue to mark the forest floor for generations to come. Take a moment to listen to the imagined silence of that forest. Feel the stillness of the air as the sun begins to dip below the horizon. There is a profound peace in knowing that even in our modern world, there are still wild places where the red wolf can move unseen. Through the trees, as you settle deeper into your rest, imagine the steady, rhythmic breathing of a wolf curled up in a hidden den, safe and undisturbed. As we think of the red wolf moving through the undergrowth, we begin to notice the unique architecture of the forest itself. The ground beneath their paws is often covered in a thick, fragrant carpet of long, amber-colored needles. These needles belong to a tree that defines the very spirit of the inland South, a tree that stands tall and straight, like a living pillar in a vast, green cathedral. As the wolves fade into the shadows, we turn our attention upward toward the high, swaying branches of the longleaf pine. The longleaf pine is a tree that commands a certain quiet respect. When you stand in the middle of a mature longleaf forest, it doesn't feel like a typical tangled woodland. Instead, it feels like a vast open cathedral. The trunks rise straight and tall clear of branches for much of their height, supporting a high canopy that allows sunlight to filter down in long, golden shafts. There is a sense of immense space here, an airy stillness that invites you to slow your breathing and simply exist within the architecture of the wood. At one time, this ecosystem was one of the most expansive in North America. It is estimated that these pines once covered nearly 90 million acres of the southeastern United States, a nearly continuous forest that stretched from the coastal plains of Virginia all the way down to Florida and across to the piney woods of Texas. To walk through it, then, would have been to walk through a sea of green that seemed to have no end. Today, though much of that vast expanse has changed, the spirit of the longleaf remains in the protected pockets of the Carolinas, where these ancient trees continue their slow, steady rhythm of growth. In its early years, the longleaf pine is a study in extraordinary patience. For the first 5 to 7 years of its life, it doesn't look like a tree at all. It remains low to the ground, appearing as a thick, lush clump of long, vibrant needles that resembles a tuft of heavy grass. This is known, quite fittingly, as the grass stage. During this time, while it shows very little growth above the soil, it is focusing all its energy downward. It is sending a deep, powerful taproot into the earth, anchoring itself firmly and searching for the nutrients it will need for the centuries to come. It waits, undisturbed, until it is strong enough to begin its ascent toward the sky. A single longleaf pine can live for over 300 years. If you were to place your hand against the thick, flaky bark of an older tree, you would be touching a living being that may have taken root before the invention of the steam engine. It has stood through centuries of seasons, through the hum of summer cicadas and the quiet chill of winter nights. The needles of the longleaf are unique, often reaching up to 18 inches in length. When the wind moves through them, it produces a very specific sound, a soft, rhythmic shushing like the breath of the earth itself. It is a sound that has lulled travelers to sleep for generations. As you imagine yourself reclining on that carpet of amber needles, looking up at the high, swaying crowns of these giants, you might notice how clean and clear the forest floor is. There is very little clutter, very few tangled briars or thickets of smaller trees. This openness is not an accident of nature. It is the result of a strange and beautiful partnership. For the longleaf pine to thrive and for its seeds to find the soil they need, the forest must occasionally experience a force that most of us associate with destruction. To understand the peace of this cathedral, we must look at the surprising life-giving role of fire. It seems almost like a contradiction to think that life can depend on something as intense as fire. Yet, in the quiet ecosystems of the Carolinas, fire is not an end, but a beginning. It is a slow cleansing breath for the land. Scientists call these fire-loving species pyrophytic, a word that comes from the ancient Greek words for fire and plant. For the longleaf pine, fire is a partner in its long, slow life, a necessary force that maintains the balance of its world. If you were to stand in the middle of a longleaf savanna during one of these natural low-intensity fires, you wouldn't see a raging wall of heat. Instead, you would see a cool fire, a gentle flickering line of flame that creeps slowly through the fallen needles and dry grasses on the ground. It moves with a quiet purpose, consuming the dead wood and the thick layers of debris that would otherwise choke the earth. This process clears the way, making room for the forest to breathe again. The longleaf pine has spent millions of years perfecting its defense against these flames. Its bark is remarkably thick, composed of many paper-thin layers that trap air between them. This creates a natural insulation, protecting the living heart of the tree from the heat outside. Even the young trees, those in the grass stage we spoke of, have a secret defense. Their long, moist needles wrap tightly around the delicate terminal bud at the center of the tuft. As a fire passes over, the outer needles may scorch, but the moisture within them creates a small, cool pocket of steam that keeps the growing tip safe and sound. It is a small miracle of biology, a tiny sanctuary in the midst of the heat. But fire does more than just spare the pine. It works for it. By clearing away the tangled brush and the faster-growing hardwood saplings, fire ensures that the forest remains open and bathed in sunlight. Without this periodic clearing, trees like oaks and sweetgums would quickly take over, casting a deep shade that the sun-loving longleaf cannot survive in. The fire resets the clock, maintaining the cathedral-like space and the airy open canopy that defines this landscape. The heat itself serves a vital purpose for the next generation. The longleaf pine's cones often hold their seeds tightly until the right conditions are met. The warmth of the fire helps to melt the resins and dry the scales, allowing them to open and release the winged seeds at exactly the right moment. When those seeds flutter down to the ground, they don't land on a thick, suffocating carpet of old leaves. Instead, they find a fresh, clear bed of mineral soil, enriched by the silver-gray ash the fire left behind. It is a perfect, nutrient-rich cradle, ready to nourish the tiny taproot as it begins its journey deep into the earth. As the smoke clears and the first rains fall, the forest doesn't look wounded. It looks refreshed. The blackened ground quickly gives way to a vibrant, electric green as new grasses and wildflowers, many of which also depend on fire to bloom, begin to push through the soil. The air is clean, smelling of rain and toasted pine, a quiet testament to the resilience of a forest that knows how to turn heat into life. Just as these fires clear a path for new growth, the water that falls upon these woods begins a journey of its own. It gathers in the low spots, trickling through the roots and the ash, eventually finding its way into the great, winding arteries of the Carolinas. These are the rivers that carry the story of the mountains down to the sea, moving with a steady, unhurried grace that mirrors the very pace of the trees themselves. As the rain falls upon the charred, rich soil of the pine forest, it begins a long, rhythmic journey toward the coast. It gathers in small, clear trickles, winding between the roots of the longleaf pines and the thick cushions of moss, eventually finding its way into the great winding arteries of the Carolinas. These are the river systems, the ancient paths that have carved the landscape into what we see today, moving with a steady, unhurried grace that mirrors the very pace of the trees themselves. One of the most storied of these pathways is the PD River. It is a river of two identities, beginning high in the Blue Ridge Mountains of North Carolina as the Yadkin River. In those high elevations, the water is cold, clear, and quick, tumbling over ancient boulders and rushing through narrow gorges. But as it descends into the rolling hills of the Piedmont and eventually crosses into South Carolina, it undergoes a transformation. The pace slows, the channel widens, and it takes on the name of the Great PD. It is a name that carries a sense of weight and history, a river that has seen the passage of centuries and the slow, inevitable change of the land. Nearby, the Santee River system carries out a similar, even more massive task. The Santee Wateree Catawba River system is a sprawling network of water that serves as the second largest drainage basin on the entire east coast of the United States, surpassed only by the Susquehanna to the north. It drains over 15,000 square miles of land, pulling water from the high peaks across the Central Plains and down toward the Atlantic. This system is the lifeblood of the region, a vast web of silver threads that keeps the ecosystem in a state of constant, gentle motion. As these rivers flow, they act as the great couriers of the landscape. They carry with them more than just water. They carry the very essence of the mountains. Tiny particles of quartz, flakes of mica, and rich minerals from the Appalachian peaks are suspended in the current, traveling hundreds of miles. Over millions of years, this process of erosion and transport has moved the mountains, grain by grain, down to the sea. The soft, sandy beaches of the coast and the rich, dark soil of the inland floodplains are the gifts of these rivers, mountain minerals transformed into a new kind of beauty. Take a slow, deep breath and imagine yourself sitting on the bank of one of these great rivers. The air is cool and smells of damp earth and fresh water. You can hear the low, constant murmur of the current as it brushes against the shore. Listen to the imagined sound of that water, a soft, liquid song, as it slides over smooth river stones. Each stone has been rounded by the water's touch, polished over decades, until it is perfectly soft to the eye. The sound is a steady, white noise, a hum that vibrates through the ground beneath you, grounding you in the present moment. The rivers do not hurry. They know that the ocean is waiting, and they understand that there is a time for every bend and every quiet pool. They move with a patience that we can learn from, a reminder that even the greatest journeys are made one steady ripple at a time. As the water moves further east, it begins to encounter the flat, low-lying lands of the coastal plain. Here, the current slows even more, and the rivers begin to meander in wide, looping curves, creating a world of shadows and still water. In these quiet, sun-dappled edges of the river's path, the environment begins to change once more, giving rise to life forms that exist nowhere else on Earth. As the river's current slows and the land levels out into the wide, sun-drenched coastal plain, the ground beneath the pines becomes damp and spongy. Here, in the transition zones between the dry, sandy ridges and the wet Poccasin bogs, the soil tells a different story. It is a world of low nutrients and high acidity, where the earth offers very little for a growing plant to feast upon. In this quiet, challenging environment, nature has crafted one of its most peculiar, and captivating survivors. Imagine walking softly through a clearing where the tall grass gives way to patches of black, peaty soil. Nestled low to the ground, almost hidden among the mosses, is a plant so extraordinary that it captured the imagination of the world's most famous naturalists. Charles Darwin, after studying its strange behavior, famously described this small green inhabitant of the Carolinas as one of the most wonderful plants in the world. He was speaking, of course, of the Venus flytrap. There is a common misconception that this plant is a tropical dweller found in deep, steaming jungles across the globe. But the truth is far more intimate and localized. The Venus flytrap is a true native of the Carolinas, and its natural home is incredibly small. In the wild, it grows only within a 75-mile radius of Wilmington, North Carolina. This tiny sliver of the planet, where the climate and soil chemistry are just right, is the only place on Earth where these emerald green traps have evolved to wait in the silence of the pine savannas. The reason for its unique lifestyle lies in the very ground it inhabits. Because the soil in these coastal wetlands lacks essential nitrogen and phosphorus, the Venus flytrap cannot rely solely on its roots to gather the building blocks of life. Over vast stretches of time, it adapted to look upward rather than downward for its sustenance. It became a predator, a botanical marvel that draws its strength from the insects that wander through the grass. As you picture the plant, see the two hinged lobes of its leaves, edged with long, delicate teeth that resemble eyelashes. On the inner surface of these lobes, there is a soft reddish hue that mimics the look of a flower, drawing curious visitors closer. But the true genius of the flytrap is not in its appearance, but in its patience and its precision. Inside each trap are 3 tiny, sensitive trigger hairs. The plant is a master of conservation. It cannot afford to snap shut for every raindrop or falling pine needle that happens to land on its surface. To save its precious energy, the flytrap has developed a primitive form of memory. An insect must touch one of those tiny hairs and then, within about 20 seconds, touch a second hair for the trap to spring. This double touch system ensures that the prey is moving and alive, a worthy source of the nutrients the soil cannot provide. When the trap finally closes, it does so with a gentle, silent snap, a movement that happens in a fraction of a second, yet feels as ancient as the land itself. Once the edges seal, the plant begins a slow, quiet process of digestion, absorbing what it needs before eventually opening its leaves again days later to wait once more. There is a profound stillness in the way the Venus flytrap exists. It does not hunt. It simply is. It waits with a quiet, unwavering presence, perfectly attuned to the rhythm of its environment. It is a reminder of the incredible creativity of life, how a lack of something in the earth can lead to a magnificent new way of reaching for the sun. As you rest, imagine the peaceful silence of those coastal savannas, where these small, wonderful sentinels sit in the damp moss, bathed in the soft light of the afternoon, existing in a world that is uniquely and beautifully theirs. The air is still, the grass is high, and the flytrap remains a patient witness to the slow passing of time. But this remarkable survivor is not the only one that has learned to thrive in the lean soils of the Carolina bogs. In the shadows nearby, other plants have found their own mysterious ways to turn the tables on the animal kingdom. While the Venus flytrap might be the most famous resident of these damp savannas, it is merely one member of a remarkable family of survivors. The Carolinas are home to an astonishing variety of carnivorous plants, more species, in fact, than almost anywhere else in the United States. In these acidic, nitrogen-poor bogs, evolution has taken several different paths to solve the same problem, resulting in a landscape where the plants themselves have become the predators of the insect world. If you look toward the edges of the tall grasses, where the soil is darkest and most saturated, you might see the elegant, upright tubes of the pitcher plant. These plants do not move or snap. They are masters of the pitfall trap. Their leaves have evolved into long, hollow vessels, often topped with a colorful, stationary hood that acts like a small umbrella to keep out the heaviest rains. To a small insect, the rim of the pitcher is an irresistible source of sweet, intoxicating nectar. But the surface of that rim is impossibly slick, and just beneath it, the inner walls are lined with tiny, downward-pointing hairs. Once a visitor loses its footing, it slides down into a pool of specialized digestive enzymes at the base of the tube. It is a quiet, inevitable process as the plant slowly turns its catch into the minerals it needs to grow tall and strong. There is a strange architectural beauty to them, standing like slender vases in the quiet of the marsh. Closer to the ground, tucked among the damp mosses and the roots of the grasses, you might find the sundews. These are small and delicate plants, often no larger than a coin, but they sparkle in the morning light as if they are covered in fresh, eternal rain. These jewels are actually droplets of a thick, sticky glue produced by the plant. When a tiny gnat or a fly lands on these shimmering beads, it finds itself held fast. In a slow-motion response that can take several minutes or even hours, the sundew's tentacles curl inward, gradually surrounding the prey. It is a gentle, almost rhythmic movement, a slow-motion dance of survival occurring in the quiet corners of the forest floor where most eyes never wander. This incredible diversity of hungry plants exists here because the environment demands it. In the green swamp and the coastal plains of the Carolinas, the soil is so depleted of life-sustaining nitrogen that only the most creative species can endure. Scientists travel from all over the world to study these bogs, marveling at how a patch of earth that seems so inhospitable can produce such intricate and specialized life. It is a testament to the resilience of nature. Where the earth is most demanding, life becomes its most inventive. As we leave these sun-dappled bogs behind, the ground beneath us becomes softer, and the air grows cooler and more humid. We are moving away from the open savannas and into the deep, mysterious heart of the Carolina swamps. Here, the light filters through a thick canopy of ancient trees, and the water stands still and dark, reflecting a world that feels as if it has remained unchanged for thousands of years. The bright colors of the carnivorous plants give way to deep greens and shadows, and the landscape begins to belong to the giants of the water. As we drift further into the quiet of the swamp, the ground beneath our feet disappears entirely, replaced by the cool, dark, tea-colored water of the Carolina wetlands. Here, the world is dominated by the bald cypress, a tree that seems to defy the very rules of nature by thriving where most others would drown. In this place, the air is heavy with the scent of damp earth and ancient wood, and the only sound is the occasional soft ripple of water against a trunk. The bald cypress is a unique member of the conifer family. Unlike many of its cousins, like the pine or the spruce, it is deciduous. Each autumn, its soft, feathery needles turn a deep, rusty orange before falling away, leaving the tree for the winter months. This cycle of shedding and regrowth has repeated for a very, very long time. In the Black River of North Carolina, researchers have discovered individual trees that are over 2,600 years old. Imagine a living thing that was already a sturdy sapling when ancient civilizations were just beginning to rise, standing silently in the same patch of water as the world changed around it. These are some of the oldest living trees in the entire world, their trunks wide and fluted, their bark a weathered silver gray. If you look closely at the water surrounding the base of these ancient giants, you will see strange wooden spires rising from the depths. These are known as cypress knees. They are smooth, conical projections that grow upward from the submerged roots of the tree, sometimes reaching several feet above the water's surface. In the dim, filtered light of the swamp, they look almost like a gathering of small, silent figures standing guard in the shallows, or perhaps the peaks of a miniature mountain range hidden beneath the surface. For decades, scientists have debated the true purpose of these knees. One long-held theory suggests they are pneumatophores, acting like snorkels to help the roots breathe in the oxygen-poor, waterlogged soil of the swamp. Another theory suggests they provide a kind of structural anchor, a complex system of organic buttresses that keep the massive trees from toppling over in the soft, shifting mud during the high winds of a coastal storm. Even today, the exact reason for their existence remains one of the swamp's many secrets, a mystery held by the trees themselves. The water here is incredibly still, acting like a perfect mirror for the silver bark and the intricate patterns of the knees. There is no rush in the swamp. The cypress grows slowly, ringing its heartwood with the passage of centuries. It is a place of profound patience. As you visualize these ancient sentinels, let your own breathing slow down to match the rhythm of the swamp. There is a deep, heavy peace in the way the cypress stands, unmoving through the ages. The water provides a soft, dark cradle for their roots, and as we look upward, the view is framed by more than just the branches of these giants. Hanging from every limb is a soft gray veil that moves with the slightest breath of wind, adding a layer of mystery to the already silent world. That gray veil is perhaps the most iconic image of the southern landscape. Spanish moss. It hangs in long, elegant tresses from the sturdy branches of the live oaks and the ancient cypress, creating a scene that feels both timeless and ethereal. Despite its name, however, it is neither Spanish nor is it a true moss. Botanically speaking, it is a flowering plant and a member of the bromelid family. This makes it a distant and surprising relative of the succulent pineapple. If you were to hold a strand of this moss in your hand, you would find it surprisingly light, almost weightless. It has no roots that reach into the tree's bark or the dark soil below. Instead, it is what scientists call an epiphyte, a word derived from Greek meaning upon a plant. It is more commonly known as an air plant. It simply drapes itself over the high branches, catching everything it needs to survive from the atmosphere. It is a master of living on nothing but the air and the rain. If we could look very closely at a single strand, we would see that it is covered in thousands of tiny silver-gray scales. These scales, or trichomes, are the secret to its survival. When it rains, or when the heavy Carolina humidity settles over the swamp, these scales act like tiny, efficient sponges. They pull moisture directly from the air and trap the minute particles of dust and minerals that the wind carries. After a heavy rain, the moss often loses its silver-gray hue and turns a vibrant, healthy green as it drinks its fill, only to return to its ghostly silver as it dries in the afternoon sun. There is something deeply comforting about the way Spanish moss lives. Because it doesn't take any nutrients from the tree it rests upon, it is a gentle and harmless guest. It uses the branches only for support, a high-altitude cradle where it can reach the dappled sunlight and the moving air. It is a beautiful example of coexistence. Two living things sharing the same space in a quiet, effortless harmony. The tree provides the height, and the moss provides a soft, protective layer that helps retain moisture in the canopy. In the stillness of the afternoon, the moss acts like a natural muffler, softening the sounds of the forest and making the world feel private and enclosed. It catches the light in a way that makes the air itself feel thick and silver, like a half-remembered dream. It doesn't move quickly. It has no reason to hurry. It simply exists, swaying in the slow rhythm of the coastal breeze. As you rest now, try to visualize those long, silver-gray curtains hanging above you. Imagine a very soft breeze, barely a whisper, moving through the canopy. Feel the weightless, swaying motion of the moss as it responds to the air. It moves with a slow, hypnotic grace, back and forth, back and forth. There is no tension in its long strands, no resistance to the wind. It simply flows, light as a feather, completely at ease in its high home. Take a slow, deep breath and let your own body feel as light and relaxed as that swaying moss. There is nothing you need to hold on to, no weight you need to carry. Just like the air plant, you can simply exist in this moment, supported and still, as the world moves gently around you. The silver veil continues to sway, a silent lullaby in the trees as we begin to look beyond the individual branches and toward the vast, mysterious patterns that can only be seen from high above the earth. If you were to raise high above the trees, floating as weightlessly as the Spanish moss in the wind, and look down on the coastal plains of the Carolinas, you would see something truly remarkable. Spread across the landscape like a series of giant shallow footprints are thousands upon thousands of mysterious elliptical depressions. These are the Carolina Bays, one of the most intriguing geological puzzles on the North American continent. From the ground, they might just look like a dense cluster of trees or a low-lying swampy area, but from the air, their perfect repeating geometry becomes clear. There are estimated to be over 500,000 of these formations scattered across the Atlantic coastal plain, with the highest concentration found right here in the Carolinas. What makes them so fascinating is their incredible consistency. Every single one of these 500,000 depressions is shaped like an oval or an egg, and almost every one of them is aligned in exactly the same direction, running from the northwest to the southeast. For decades, scientists have looked at these patterns and wondered what could have created such a vast and uniform landscape. One of the most poetic, though debated theories is that they were formed by a cosmic event. Some researchers suggested that a massive meteorite struck the icy shell of North America during the last ice age, sending giant chunks of ice flying through the atmosphere. When these icy boulders landed in the soft, sandy soil of the Carolinas, they created these shallow oval craters. It is a dramatic image. Thousands of icy stars falling silently into the earth long before humans were there to see them. While that theory captures the imagination, most modern geologists believe a quieter, slower process was at work. They suggest that ancient winds blowing steadily across the shallow ponds of a receding coastline slowly pushed the water and sediment into these precise elliptical shapes over thousands of years. It wasn't a sudden impact, but a slow, rhythmic carving by the elements, a patient dialogue between the wind and the water that lasted for eons. The name Carolina Bay doesn't actually refer to bodies of water, but rather to the trees that thrive within them. These depressions are often filled with Sweet Bay, Loblolly Bay, and Red Bay trees. Because the soil inside the bays is often heavy with peat and stays damp year-round, they have become unique islands of biodiversity. Inside these quiet oval sanctuaries, you can find rare wildflowers, ancient lilies, and more of those curious carnivorous plants we spoke of earlier. They are like secret gardens, hidden in plain sight, protected by their own unique geography. As you think about these 500,000 ancient ovals, imagine the stillness that rests within them. They are places where time seems to have slowed down, where the dark, soft peat absorbs every sound. The water within them is often still and dark, reflecting the sky like a series of scattered mirrors. There is no rush in a Carolina Bay. There is only the slow growth of moss and the steady, quiet life of the wetlands. Take a slow, deep breath and imagine the vastness of this landscape. 500,000 quiet, protected spaces, all pointing the same way, all following the same ancient rhythm. The earth holds these shapes like memories of a time when the world was very different. And as we look closer at the soil of these ancient plains, we begin to realize that the history of this land goes even deeper than the shapes on its surface. Beneath the peat and the sand, there are even older secrets waiting to be found. Remnants of a time when the very ground we are standing on was the bottom of a vast prehistoric sea. Imagine walking through a quiet, sun-dappled forest in eastern North Carolina. The air is still, smelling of pine needles and damp earth. As you follow the path of a small, slow-moving creek, you might decide to kneel by the water's edge. If you were to run your fingers through the cool, dark gravel at the bottom of that stream, you might find something that feels entirely out of place in a forest. You might pull out a sharp, triangular object, smooth to the touch and heavy with the weight of time. It isn't a stone, though it has the hardness of one. It is a fossilized shark tooth. Finding the remains of an ocean predator in the middle of a woodland may seem like a mystery, but it is simply a quiet reminder of how much the world has changed. Millions of years ago, during the Miocene and Pliocene epochs, the Atlantic Ocean did not stop at the sandy beaches we know today. Instead, it reached far inland, covering more than half of the Carolinas. The ground you might be standing on now, perhaps miles from the nearest salt spray, was once the floor of a vast, prehistoric sea. In those waters, millions of sharks lived, hunted, and grew. And because sharks naturally lose thousands of teeth throughout their lives, the seafloor became a resting place for these durable fragments of history. As the oceans receded over millions of years, they left behind thick layers of sediment, sand, clay, and shells that trapped these teeth in a protective embrace. Today, as rain falls and modern rivers slowly carve through the earth, they wash away the soil and reveal these ancient treasures once again. Among these finds are the legendary teeth of the megalodon. These massive predators were the largest sharks to ever exist, and their teeth can be larger than a human hand. To hold one is to feel a direct connection to a world that existed long before ours. They are often found in creek beds and riverbanks, dark and polished by the water, looking as though they were lost only yesterday rather than 5 million years ago. In the small town of Aurora, North Carolina, this prehistoric history is especially close to the surface. Nearby phosphate mines dig deep into the earth, bringing up huge mounds of ancient seafloor sediment. The Aurora Fossil Museum allows visitors to sit quietly and sift through these piles of gray sand. With a little patience, you can find hundreds of small teeth from lemon sharks, tiger sharks, and even the ancestors of the great white. There is a profound peace in this kind of discovery. It is a slow meditative process, sifting through the sand, feeling the cool grains between your fingers, and waiting for a flash of dark, glossy enamel to catch the light. Each tooth is a tiny, perfect record of a life lived in a sea that no longer exists. As you imagine the stillness of that ancient seafloor buried deep beneath the roots of the trees, take a slow, deep breath. The earth is a vast library of stories, layered one on top of the other. The forest grows where the waves once rolled, and the sand beneath your feet holds the memories of a million tides. This sense of deep time reminds us that the landscape is never truly finished. It is always shifting, always moving, even if the change is too slow for us to see in a single lifetime. And as we move further toward the edge of the continent, we see that this movement is not just a thing of the past. Along the very rim of the Carolinas, the land is still dancing with the sea, creating a coastline that is as restless as the waves themselves. As we reach the very edge of the Carolinas, the solid ground beneath our feet begins to feel a little lighter, a little more fluid here. Where the land meets the vast expanse of the Atlantic, we find the outer banks, a thin, fragile ribbon of sand that stretches for over 200 miles. These are not permanent fixtures of the earth in the way the ancient mountains are. Instead, they are what geologists call barrier islands, and they are among the most dynamic environments on our planet. If you were to look at a map of these islands from 100 years ago and compare it to one from today, you would see A subtle but profound difference. The Outer Banks are never in the same place twice. They are constantly in motion, performing a slow, graceful migration toward the mainland. This happens through a process called overwash. During high tides and the natural cycle of storms, the ocean carries sand from the beach over the dunes and deposits it on the sound side of the island. In this way, the islands are slowly rolling over themselves, step by step, inch by inch, moving closer to the coast as the sea levels rise and fall over centuries. Imagine standing on a high dune in the quiet of the night. Beneath you is not solid bedrock, but a massive accumulation of sand and ancient shells resting gently on the submerged edge of the continental shelf. There is a certain peace in knowing that nothing here is fixed. The landscape is a conversation between the wind and the water. The dunes you see tonight may be shaped differently by morning, as the breeze whispers across the grains of quartz, rearranging them into new patterns while you sleep. The sand itself is a marvel of nature's recycling. Much of it is made of tiny fragments of the very mountains we visited earlier, washed down through rivers over eons, and finally deposited here at the ocean's edge. This mountain quartz is mixed with the finely crushed remains of sea life, scallops, clams, and oysters, creating a soft, pale floor that glows under the moonlight. It is soft, cool, and ever-changing. As the waves lap against the shore, they bring with them the rhythm of the entire Atlantic, a steady, pulsing heartbeat that has echoed here for thousands of years. Take a moment to listen to that imagined rhythm, the rise and fall of the tide, the soft hiss of foam retreating over the shells. Feel your own breath sink with that movement, slow, steady, and effortless. You are safe here, anchored by the weight of the sand, even as the islands themselves drift through time. This restless energy of the coast is driven by more than just the wind. Just beyond these shifting sands, beneath the surface of the dark blue water, a powerful force is at work. It is a hidden giant, a great river within the ocean that flows with a strength we can hardly imagine, shaping the climate and the life of the Carolinas in ways that are felt far beyond the shore. As the sand moves beneath the wind, this great current moves beneath the waves, bringing warmth and life from the distant south to the very edge of these islands. Just a few miles off the coast of Cape Hatteras, where the land finally yields to the deep, the Atlantic reveals one of its most powerful secrets. Hidden beneath the surface of the waves is a vast, invisible force known as the Gulf Stream. It is often described as a river in the ocean, but even that name struggles to capture its true scale. Imagine a current so immense that it moves more water every single second than all the world's rivers combined. The Amazon, the Nile, the Mississippi, every stream and tributary on Earth could flow into this one oceanic artery and still be vastly outnumbered by its volume. This great current is a ribbon of deep sapphire blue water, strikingly different from the greener, shallower waters near the coast. It is carrying the heat of the Caribbean and the tropics northward like a giant liquid heater. Because it passes so close to the Carolina coast, at times just 15 to 20 miles from the shore, it exerts a profound influence on the life and the weather of the region. It is the reason why a winter day on the Outer Banks can feel surprisingly mild as the warmth from the Gulf Stream radiates through the air, softening the bite of the Atlantic wind. As you lie there, imagine this massive, silent conveyor belt of water moving steadily past the shore. It is constant, never stopping, never hurried, yet possessed of a momentum that shapes the entire planet's climate. Within its warm embrace, a whole world of travelers is carried along. Tiny, tropical fish caught in the current far to the south find themselves drifting past the Carolina Capes. Brightly colored species that would normally belong in a coral reef are swept into these northern latitudes, thriving in the pockets of warmth the stream provides. The water here is remarkably clear and teeming with life. Floating mats of golden sargassum seaweed drift along its edges, providing a sanctuary for small crabs, shrimp, and young fish. It is a nursery in motion, a floating forest that moves with the current. The interaction between this warm giant and the cooler waters from the north creates a unique environment where life flourishes in every layer of the sea. Feel the warmth of that thought, the idea of a great protective current that brings life and gentle air to the edge of the land. The Gulf Stream is a reminder of the Earth's interconnectedness, a slow and steady pulse that links the distant tropics to these sandy shores. It is a presence you can feel in the humidity of a summer night and see in the deep blue of the horizon. And as this great river flows silently northward, it serves as a highway for some of the ocean's most ancient and patient voyagers. These travelers rely on the warmth and the direction of the current to find their way, following a map that is written into their very being, guided by the same forces that move the tides and the stars. They are moving toward the shore now, guided by an internal compass that has never failed them. Among those ancient travelers riding the warmth of the Gulf Stream is one of the most patient and enduring creatures of the sea, the loggerhead sea turtle. They are the wanderers of the Atlantic, spending decades roaming thousands of miles of open ocean, yet they never truly lose their way. Imagine a female loggerhead, her large heart-shaped shell glistening just beneath the surface of the water. She has spent years in the deep, following the currents, but a biological clock has begun to chime within her. It is time to return home. The way she finds her way back is one of nature's most quiet miracles. Scientists have discovered that these turtles possess a sense called magnetoreception. Deep within their bodies, they have a sensitivity to the Earth's magnetic field. To a loggerhead, the world is not a vast empty blue. It is a map of invisible lines and pulls, a magnetic signature that is unique to every stretch of coastline. She is looking for one specific place, the very beach where she herself crawled out of the sand as a hatchling 20 or 30 years ago. This is known as natal homing. After traveling across entire oceans and visiting distant continents, she can pinpoint the same few miles of Carolina sand where her own life began. It is a homecoming of incredible precision, guided by a compass she carries inside her, tuned to the frequency of her birth. As the sun sets and the moon rises over the dunes of the Outer Banks or the sea islands, she finally reaches the breaking waves. She waits for the tide to be just right, and then, with a heavy, deliberate grace, she pulls herself out of the surf. On land, she is no longer the weightless glider of the deep. She is heavy and slow. Every movement is a great effort. Using her powerful front flippers, she hauls her massive body across the damp sand, leaving a wide, rhythmic trail that looks like the tracks of a small tractor. She moves toward the dark silhouette of the dunes, seeking the high ground away from the reach of the rising tide. When she finds the perfect spot, she begins to dig. Using her rear flippers like delicate shovels, she carves out a deep light bulb-shaped hole in the cool, dry sand. It is a slow and careful process, a labor of instinct. Into this hidden chamber, she will lay her eggs, often more than 100 of them. They are white and round, about the size of ping-pong balls, with a soft, leathery shell that allows them to remain intact as they drop into the nest. Once the nest is full, she carefully covers it with sand, patting it down and smoothing it over until the spot is nearly invisible to the untrained eye. Her task finished, she turns back toward the ocean. She is exhausted, her breath coming in slow, heavy huffs, but she is driven by the call of the water. Take a slow, deep breath now and imagine that scene. The beach is silent, save for the rhythmic hush of the waves. The moon casts a long silver path across the Atlantic, illuminating the wet, dark shell of the turtle as she makes her way back to the sea. There is no hurry in her movement, only a steady, ancient persistence. She reaches the edge of the foam, and as the first wave washes over her, she becomes light again. With one final push, she disappears into the dark, cool embrace of the water, leaving her legacy buried safely beneath the warm Carolina sand. The beach returns to its stillness. The stars watch over the hidden nests, and the dunes stand as silent guardians. In the quiet of the night, the only movement is the gentle shift of the sand and the soft, pulsing energy of the ocean itself, where even the smallest organisms begin to wake and shimmer in the dark. As the sea turtle vanishes into the deep, the water she enters may hold a secret light of its own. On certain warm summer nights along the Carolina coast, the Atlantic doesn't just reflect the stars above, it seems to create its own stars within the swell. If you were to walk along the shoreline in the velvet darkness, you might notice a soft neon blue shimmer where the water meets the land each time a wave crests and breaks. It isn't just white foam that spills onto the sand, but a sudden, ethereal flash of turquoise light that lingers for just a heartbeat before dissolving back into the dark. This phenomenon is known as bioluminescence, a living light that transforms the surf into something truly magical. It is caused by billions of microscopic organisms called dinoflagellates. These tiny drifting plankton are so small, they are invisible to the naked eye during the day, suspended in the water column like dust motes in a sunbeam. But at night, they become the fireflies of the ocean. They carry within them the biological machinery to produce light through a precise and beautiful chemical reaction. Imagine the feeling of the cool, damp sand beneath your feet as you walk near the water's edge. With every step you take, the pressure of your foot against the wet sand causes a burst of blue light to ripple outward like a footprint made of glowing embers. This happens because the dinoflagellates are sensitive to physical disturbance. When the water is moved, whether by a breaking wave, the darting path of a fish, or your own quiet footsteps, these tiny creatures respond by flashing. It is a silent language of light, a defense mechanism designed to startle predators, or perhaps to illuminate the source of the disturbance in the vast, dark sea. The science behind this glow is as elegant as the light itself. It is a process of bioluminescence that involves two specific substances, a molecule called luciferin and an enzyme called luciferase. When these two meet in the presence of oxygen, they spark a cold light, a glow that produces almost no heat, making it one of the most efficient energy conversions in the natural world. In the quiet of a Carolina night, this reaction happens billions of times over in every gallon of seawater, turning the dark Atlantic into a shifting, glowing tapestry of blue and green. Take a slow, deep breath and visualize those glowing waves. The sound of the ocean is a low, steady pulse, and the light is a soft, rhythmic hum for the eyes. There is no harshness in this glow. It is a gentle, liquid radiance that fades as quickly as it appears, leaving the water dark and still once more until the next wave rolls in. It is a reminder that even in the deepest shadows of the night, there is life and energy working in harmony, following the ancient rhythms of the tides. As you stand there in your mind, watching the neon ribbons of light dance in the surf, the air is salt-tangled and cool. The world feels very large, yet very peaceful. The same ocean that carries these tiny glowing sparks also cradles the barrier islands that stand firm against the horizon. And just beyond the dunes, where the salt spray settles on the marsh grass, other resilient lives are resting in the dark. Creatures who have adapted to this rugged, beautiful landscape over hundreds of years. Small bands of survivors standing quietly in the moonlight watch the same glowing sea. In the quiet shadows of the dunes, where the sea oats sway in the moonlight, you might see a silhouette that feels like a fragment of another time. These are the wild horses of the Outer Banks, often called banker horses. They have stood upon these shores for over 500 years, their presence a testament to a resilience that matches the very islands themselves. To understand how these horses came to be here, we must look back to the 16th century, to an era of wooden ships and vast, uncharted oceans. These horses are the descendants of Spanish mustangs brought across the Atlantic by explorers and colonists. The treacherous shoals of the Carolina coast, known for centuries as the graveyard of the Atlantic, claimed many of those ships. In the chaos of the wrecks, or perhaps during the abandonment of early settlements, these hardy animals were left to find their own way. They did more than just survive. They became an inseparable part of the coastal ecosystem. Imagine the life of a horse on a narrow strip of sand, surrounded by the salt spray of the Atlantic on one side and the brackish sounds on the other. There are no lush green meadows here, yet the horses thrive. They have adapted in fascinating ways. Their diet consists primarily of marsh grasses, such as spartina, which grow in the damp, salty soil of the Soundside marshes. Because this grass is so rich in salt, the horses often appear slightly rounder or more bloated than their inland cousins. Not from lack of health, but because their bodies have learned to retain water to balance the salt intake. Their search for fresh water is a master class in natural intuition. Deep beneath the sandy surface of the islands lies a freshwater lens, a layer of rain-fed water that floats atop the denser salt water below. To reach it, the horses use their hooves to dig shallow pits in the sand, creating their own small wells. They wait with a quiet patience for the water to seep upward, clear and cool, before drinking their fill. This rhythmic daily labor has been passed down through generations, a knowledge etched into their very behavior. The horses of the Corolla and Shackelford banks are genetically distinct, carrying the markers of the Iberian Peninsula in their DNA. They are smaller in stature than modern breeds, with low-set tails and a sturdy, compact build that helps them navigate the soft, shifting sands. In the winter, their coats grow thick and shaggy, protecting them from the biting ocean winds that sweep across the barrier islands. Take a slow breath and visualize a small band of these horses standing together on a high dune at midnight. Their manes are tangled by the wind, and their eyes are calm, reflecting the stars above. They do not hurry. They move with the slow, deliberate pace of creatures who know the land and its moods. There is a profound stillness in their presence, a sense of being exactly where they belong, undisturbed by the passage of centuries. The same wind that tosses their manes is a constant companion on these islands. It is a steady, predictable force that shapes the dunes and bends the live oaks toward the west. It is a wind that carries stories of survival, but also of possibility. For centuries, this air has moved over the sand with a relentless energy, waiting for someone to understand its secrets. And not far from where these horses graze, on a series of particularly tall and steady dunes, that very wind would one day be used to lift the world into a new age. The wind at Kitty Hawk is not like the gusty, unpredictable breezes found inland. It is a steady, directional force, shaped by the vast, flat expanse of the Atlantic Ocean. For two brothers from Ohio, Orville and Wilbur Wright, this reliable air was the final piece of a puzzle they had been trying to solve for years. They were looking for a very specific set of conditions to test their theories on flight, and they found them on this narrow ribbon of sand. They needed three things: steady winds to provide lift, tall dunes to allow for gravity-assisted launches, and a soft place to land. Imagine the brothers standing on the crest of a massive dune known as Big Kill Devil Hill. The sand beneath their boots is fine and pale, shifting slightly with every step. Before them, the horizon is a seamless blend of gray-blue sky and darker blue water. They chose this remote location partly for its privacy, but mostly for its physics. In the early 1900s, the Weather Bureau in Washington had identified Kitty Hawk as one of the windiest places in the country, with average speeds that could consistently provide the necessary airflow over their experimental wings. As you settle deeper into your blankets, think about the physics of that air. When wind hits the face of a large sand dune, it is forced upward, creating a natural elevator of rising air. This is what pilots call slope soaring. The Wright brothers used these invisible currents to test their gliders, feeling the tension in the control wires as the wind pushed against the stretched muslin of the wings. The sand was their safety net. Unlike the hard earth of a field, the soft, forgiving dunes of the Outer Banks allowed them to crash and tip over dozens of times without destroying their fragile machines or injuring themselves. It was a landscape that encouraged persistence. On the morning of December 17, 1903, the air was particularly cold and biting. The ground was frozen in patches, and the wind was blowing at 27 miles per hour. There was no crowd, no cheering, just the quiet hum of a small four-cylinder engine and the rhythmic sound of the waves in the distance. When the Wright Flyer finally left the wooden launching rail, It didn't soar high into the clouds. It stayed low, hovering just a few feet above the sand, battling the wind as it moved forward. That first flight lasted only 12 seconds. It covered a distance of 120 feet, shorter than the wingspan of a modern commercial airliner. But in those 12 seconds, the world changed. The machine was heavy, made of spruce wood and ash, held together with piano wire, and covered in a fine cotton fabric. It moved with a slow, wobbling grace. A temporary visitor to the sky visualized that moment, the pale light of a winter morning, the vast, empty beach, and the sight of a man-made craft defying gravity for the very first time. There is a profound peace in the memory of that short journey, a sense of quiet triumph over the elements. The brothers would make 3 more flights that day, each one slightly longer than the last, before a sudden gust of wind caught the flyer and rolled it across the sand, damaging it beyond immediate repair. Their work at Kitty Hawk was done, but the wind continued to blow over the dunes just as it always had. Even now, if you visit those hills at night, the air feels charged with that same steady energy. It is a place where the earth meets the sky in a constant, invisible dance. As we move away from the dunes and back toward the edge of the sea, the wind takes on a different character. It is no longer a tool for flight, but a warning for those on the water. The same currents that lifted the Wright brothers into the air have for centuries pushed ships toward the treacherous, shifting shoals that lie just beneath the surface of the waves. To navigate these waters, one needs more than just an understanding of the wind. One needs a light to guide the way through the darkness. As we leave the dunes where flight began, we look out toward the horizon, where the dark sea meets the edge of the world. This particular stretch of the Carolina coast has a reputation that reaches back through the centuries. It is known as the Graveyard of the Atlantic, a title that sounds dramatic, but in the quiet of the night, it speaks to the incredible power of the ocean and the resilience of those who navigate it. The danger here isn't just the wind or the waves, but something hidden beneath the surface. Just off Cape Hatteras, 2 of the world's most powerful ocean currents meet in a silent underwater collision. The warm turquoise waters of the Gulf Stream, flowing up from the tropics, crash into the cold, deep green waters of the Labrador Current coming from the north. This meeting creates a massive turbulence that stirs up the seabed, forming the Diamond Shoals. These are shifting ridges of sand that can extend 14 miles out into the ocean, often hiding just a few feet below the waves. For a ship unaware of their presence, they are a labyrinth of sand and foam. Standing guard over these treacherous waters is the Cape Hatteras Lighthouse. You might recognize its iconic design, a tall, elegant tower wrapped in a bold black and white spiral, like a giant stick of candy rising from the maritime forest. At 210 feet, it holds the title of the tallest brick lighthouse in the United States. Its construction is a marvel of the 19th century, made of approximately 1.25 million bricks, each one laid by hand to create a structure that could withstand the fiercest Atlantic storms. The light at the top is not just a simple bulb. It originally housed a massive Fresnel lens, a masterpiece of glass and light that could project a beam far across the dark horizon. Today, its automated light continues to rotate, casting a steady, rhythmic glow that sweeps across the sea every 7.5 seconds. For a sailor caught in a storm or navigating the deep darkness of a moonless night, that flash of light is a hand reaching out through the mist, a constant reminder of where the safe harbor lies, but even a lighthouse as grand as Hatteras is at the mercy of the shifting sands. For over a century, the ocean slowly reclaimed the beach in front of the tower. By the late 20th century, the waves were lapping at its very base, threatening to topple the historic Sentinel into the surf. In 1999, a decision was made that captured the world's imagination. Engineers didn't tear it down. They moved it. The entire lighthouse, weighing nearly 5,000 tons, was lifted onto a system of steel mats and rollers. Over the course of 23 days, it was moved 2,900 feet inland, retreating from the sea at a pace so slow it was almost imperceptible to the naked eye. It was a journey of patience, a testament to our desire to protect the things that guide us. Now, the lighthouse sits safely back from the shore, surrounded by trees and quiet paths. As the beam of the lighthouse passes over your head, you can feel the immense scale of the coast. The light cuts a path through the salt, heavy air, illuminating the spray of the waves for a brief moment before returning the world to shadow. It is a reminder that even in the darkest reaches of the coast, there is a rhythm and a presence watching over the water. And as we look up, following that beam of light into the sky, we begin to notice that the darkness itself is a canvas, revealing a universe far more vast than the ocean below. As that lighthouse beam sweeps across the sky, it eventually fades into a darkness so profound it feels like velvet. Away from the neon hum of the cities and the glowing grids of the suburbs, the Carolinas offer some of the most pristine windows into the cosmos found anywhere on the East Coast. When we step away from the artificial glow of our modern world, we rediscover a sky that our ancestors would have recognized. A sky thick with stars, layered in a depth that seems to go on forever. In the high elevations of the Blue Ridge Mountains, there is a sanctuary for this darkness known as the Bare Dark Sky Observatory. Perched at an elevation of about 2,700 feet in Burnsville, North Carolina, it was the first site in the Southeast to be certified as an International Dark Sky Park. Here, the air is thin and crisp, and the surrounding peaks act as a natural fortress, shielding the valley from the light pollution of distant towns. In a typical city, the human eye might only be able to pick out a dozen or so of the brightest stars through the hazy orange glow of streetlights. But in a certified dark sky park, that number jumps into the thousands. On a clear, moonless night, the Milky Way isn't just a faint, ghostly smudge. It is a brilliant, arched river of stardust, glowing with the light of billions of suns. You can see the dark rifts of interstellar dust clouds cutting through the center of our galaxy, looking like shadows cast against a celestial bonfire. The clarity of the view here isn't just about the lack of light. It's about the physics of the atmosphere. The surrounding mountain peaks help to stabilize the air, reducing the turbulence that usually makes stars appear to twinkle or shimmer. Astronomers call this seeing. When the seeing is good, the stars shine with a steady, unwavering light. It creates a sense of profound stillness, as if the universe itself has paused to let you look. As your eyes adjust to this deep darkness, a process that takes about 20 minutes as your pupils dilate and a protein called rhodopsin builds up in your retinas, the sky begins to feel closer. You might notice the soft, fuzzy glow of the Andromeda Galaxy, the most distant object visible to the naked eye, located over 2 million light years away. Its light has been traveling through the vacuum of space since long before humans walked these mountains, finally ending its journey on the back of your eye. Down on the coast, the darkness takes on a different quality. On the remote stretches of the Outer Banks, you can stand on the dunes with your back to the maritime forest and look out over the Atlantic. With no cities for thousands of miles across the water, the horizon line simply vanishes. The stars seem to dip right into the waves, blurring the line between the heavens and the earth. Take a slow, deep breath and imagine yourself lying back on a blanket of cool sand or soft mountain grass. The air around you is quiet, disturbed only by the faint rustle of the wind. Above you, the universe is unfolding in a slow, silent dance. Each point of light is a distant sun, casting its ancient glow down upon the quiet pines and the shifting dunes. You are a small, peaceful part of this grand, glittering design, resting under a canopy that has watched over the Carolinas for eons. As you watch the slow drift of the constellations, you can feel the weight of the day lifting, replaced by the immense, quiet rhythm of the night sky. And just as the stars follow their fixed paths through the dark, the world below begins to respond to the gentle pull of the celestial bodies above. The moon, though it hangs nearly 250,000 miles away in that deep velvet sky, has its fingers in the water. Its gravitational pull is a silent, invisible tether that reaches across the vacuum of space to grasp the oceans of the earth. Along the coast of the Carolinas, this celestial tug-of-war manifests as a slow, rhythmic breathing of the sea. It is a pulse that has continued, uninterrupted, for as long as the moon has circled our world. As you lie there, imagine the vast expanse of the Atlantic Ocean beginning to swell. This isn't the crashing of a storm wave, but a gradual, heavy lifting of the entire surface of the water. In the Carolinas, we experience what scientists call semi-diurnal tides. This means that in every 24-hour cycle, the coast experiences 2 high tides and 2 low tides of nearly equal height. It is a steady, predictable heartbeat. Every 6 hours and 12 minutes, the direction of the water changes. It is an eternal cycle of coming and going, of filling and emptying. When the tide begins to rise, the water moves away from the deep ocean and pushes into the sounds and estuaries. It winds its way through the narrow inlets between the barrier islands, flooding into the vast, emerald green expanses of the salt marshes. These marshes are the hidden lungs of the Carolina coast. Dominated by resilient species like smooth cordgrass or spartina, the marsh is a world that exists between the land and the sea. As the salt water creeps up the stalks of the grass, it transforms the landscape. What was a mudflat only hours before becomes a shimmering, watery mirror. This movement of water is the great engine of the coastal food web. With every incoming tide, the ocean brings in a fresh supply of oxygen and microscopic nutrients. It delivers a feast to the oysters clustered on the muddy banks and the blue crabs hiding in the shadows of the grass. When the tide recedes, it carries away organic matter and minerals, flushing them back out to sea to feed the larger creatures of the deep. It is a massive, natural conveyor belt that sustains life across hundreds of miles of coastline. Beyond its role as a provider, the salt marsh acts as a vital guardian for the mainland. Scientists often describe these marshes as a giant sponge. During a storm or a particularly high tide, the dense network of roots and the soft, silty soil of the marsh absorb the energy of the waves and soak up the excess water. This natural buffer protects the inland towns and forests from the raw power of the Atlantic. Without the quiet, humble presence of the marsh, the coastline would be far more fragile, easily eroded by the very water that gives it life. Take a slow, deep breath and try to match your rhythm to the movement of the tide. As you inhale, imagine the cool, salt-scented water rising, filling the quiet creeks and lifting the blades of the marsh grass. As you exhale, imagine the water slowly drawing back, leaving the earth damp and still. There is a profound peace in knowing that this cycle requires no effort from us. It is governed by the stars and the moon, a clockwork mechanism that will continue to tick long after we have drifted into sleep. The sounds of the night coast are a symphony of this movement, the soft gurgle of water moving through a tidal creek, the distant muffled roar of the surf on the outer beaches, and the gentle sigh of the wind through the maritime forest. The water is never truly still, yet it moves with such deliberate, unhurried grace that it creates a sense of absolute calm. The land and the sea are in a constant ancient conversation, whispered in the language of the tides. As the moon continues its slow arc across the sky, the water responds, rising and falling in a dance that has no beginning and no end. You're resting on the edge of a world that is always being renewed, held in the steady, rhythmic cradle of the ocean's breath. As we reach the end of our quiet crossing, take one more long, slow breath. We have traveled from the high, ancient peaks of the Blue Ridge, where the air smells of cool spruce and damp earth, all the way down to the sun-warmed sands and the rhythmic pulse of the Atlantic tides. It is a journey across millions of years of history etched into the very stones and soil of the Carolinas. From the blue haze of the mountain forests to the glowing bioluminescence of the summer surf, every mile has whispered a story of resilience and slow, steady change. The earth continues its cycles even as you rest. In the high country, the wind and rain are softly wearing down the granite peaks, a process of erosion so gradual it would take lifetimes to see the difference of a single inch. In the east, the barrier islands are inching toward the mainland, a slow migration driven by the rising sea and the shifting winds. These are the long breaths of the planet, growth and decay, rising and falling, a constant motion that requires nothing from us but our witness. The mountains are not in a hurry to disappear, and the sea is not in a hurry to arrive. They exist in a state of perfect, patient timing. High above the longleaf pines and the dark, quiet swamps, the stars remain constant. The same constellations that guided the first travelers across these lands now hang silently over your home. The Milky Way stretches like a pale ribbon across the sky, a reminder of the vast, peaceful vacuum of space that surrounds our vibrant world. There is a deep security in this constancy. The stars do not flicker with worry, and the mountains do not struggle against the wind. Everything in the natural world is exactly where it needs to be, moving at the pace it was meant to move. Now, it is time to let go of the day's thoughts. Just as the tide must recede to allow the marsh to breathe, Your mind must step back from the activities and concerns of the waking world. Sleep is not merely a pause, it is your body's own natural rhythm, as essential and inevitable as the moon's pull on the ocean. It is the time when your internal landscape restores itself, much like the forest floor after a gentle rain. Your heartbeat and your breath are your own private tides, slowing down now, settling into the quiet dark. Imagine yourself as a part of this great quiet system. You are as much a part of the natural world as the wild horses on the dunes or the ancient cypress trees standing in the black water. You are allowed to be still. You are allowed to be silent. The world will keep turning, the tides will keep rising, and the stars will keep their watch while you drift away. There is nothing left to do, nowhere left to go. Feel the weight of your body pressing softly into your bed, as grounded as a mountain stone. Let your breath become as effortless as the wind through the sea oats. The journey is over, and the destination is here, in the stillness of the Carolinas. From the blue peaks to the salt spray, all is quiet. All is well. Sleep now. Drift into the deep, dark blue of the night. Let the silence carry you. Sleep, sleep, sleep.